Can you hear me, Robin? This is Greg.
Hi, Greg. Yes, I can.
Okay.
And I know that if we're not finished, that you're departing at 6:45.
6:45. Do you know if we'll need any of the alternates for voting today? Or
I'm not sure. I know Stephanie won't be joining us, but I think we should be okay.
okay. Thanks.
I don't
You just unmuted yourself.
I don't have a plug.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Well, it looks like we have a quorum and we have reached 6 o'clock. So Robin, if you can hit the magic button.
Oh, yeah. I'm working from two computers here. Oops.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting of Monday, November 23 to order. Please call the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Becky Schaefer. Commissioner Stoker.
Here.
Commissioner Lemke.
Here.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer. Commissioner Chorin.
Here.
Commissioner Gentes.
Here.
Commissioner Bach.
Here.
Alderman Nurbin,
Here.
Mayor Worth.
Here.
I just want to check if Alderman Becky Schaefer had joined.
Or
No.
Commissioner.
I'm sorry. I upgraded her. Commissioner, I'm sorry.
Downgraded.
Upgraded. Sorry, Andy.
Well, I've been there. No slight to Andy.
Okay.
I'm supposed to remind people of 4 things at the beginning of each virtual meeting. Please, if you're not speaking, mute your phones. If you're going to speak and I haven't said your name before you speak, please state your name. Please don't talk over one another. It's hard to follow on a virtual meeting. And finally, although we always encourage public participation, the public, that doesn't include applicants who want to participate in the meeting, need to sign up in advance so that we can have some orderly meetings as opposed to not knowing who's talking. I see that Commissioner Schaefer has joined us. Welcome. And she's here. So those are the 4 things. The first item of business is to approve the minutes from October 26th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Somebody? We have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those are approved. We only have 2 items of business on the agenda tonight. The first is an application for a conditional use grant and a sign waiver approval for a proposed 2,344 square foot eatery bar and grill for the property at 10631 West Freistadt Road, known as Corner Q's. I see that the applicant is here. Welcome and thank you for wanting to move your business to Mequon. The write-up is fairly self-explanatory. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Hearing none. Mr. or Mrs. Wright, is there anything you'd like to add to your application? Although I'm guessing there's not going to be a lot of problems here.
Not at this time. Yeah, not at this time.
Well, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the conditional use grant and the sign waiver? I do note that we had a comment that came in about the sign waiver. Although I think the writer might not have understood that the waiver is simply allowing the refacing of an existing, the sign in the format it's already there, as opposed to some new, entirely different condition. That is correct. Buffalo, that's correct, right?
Yeah, I don't know if they actually looked at the packet and saw what was being proposed, but there is an existing projecting sign based upon our records. I don't know that it ever received formal approval, but they're not proposing any sign that's not similar to what's out there in that area.
That sign's been there for a long, long time, or at least a sign like that. So is there a motion to approve? Jack?
Did we open and close? No, I know. I'm just asking, did we open and close the public hearing formally?
Oh, you're right. It's a public hearing. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor of going into public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Since nobody signed up to speak at the public hearing, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Now,
Aye.
the motion to approve would be in order. Commissioner Stoker,
I would make a motion to approve per staff recommendations.
is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I have one comment. Oh, yes, Buffalo?
So I do want to note one correction in the hours of operation. I had listed in the report 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. based on what the applicant submitted, and then until 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, but their application did state that they wanted to open until 11 p.m. on Thursday. So I don't know if the commissioner is okay with saying 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. basically Sunday through Thursday, and then just until 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. Otherwise, we can split that up in the conditional use with whatever hours you're comfortable with.
As the
Is that a
motion,
friendly amendment, Mr. Stoker?
yes, I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
And whoever had the second, is that fine with the seconder? I don't remember who that was.
I think it was me, yes.
Okay. I'd ask that you consider, whether we consider adding one thing to the conditional use grant. In sections 9E of the actual language, there's a whole laundry list of things that's always in there. If it comes up, that we can ask the applicant to come back to if there are problems arising. And I would just like to add odors and smoke to that laundry list in case, you know, they're going to be barbecuing outside, which is great. Mequon could use a barbecue place. There are barbecue places that you can barely tell they exist. And there are barbecue places that smoke up whole neighborhoods, and there are homes somewhat close to this restaurant. The closest 154 feet away, I'm told. So I'm assuming that the applicant will deal with this responsibly and not smoke out their neighbors. But I'd like to have the commission consider adding that to the list of items that potentially the city could ask them to come back to talk about. Is that a friendly amendment, Mr. Stoker and Mr. Lemke?
Yes, for Mr. Stoker.
Yes for Lemke.
All right. With that, those two friendly amendments, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And opposed? There are no opposed. Thank you for coming, Mr. and Mrs. Wright. When do you think you'll be open?
We are planning to try and open up the bar itself within the next month. And we plan on having the food and the barbecue going probably about 4 months after that.
Well, let City Hall know so I want to come and try your barbecue.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item of business is the building and site plan approval and specimen tree removal for the approximately 29,500 square foot outpatient medical clinic that is to be located at the northwest corner of Highland Road and Port Washington Road. What staff person is going to make a short presentation for us this evening?
I will, Mayor. So I have the site plan in front of you on the screen. I believe the commissioners saw this back in July. It's been a while, and there's been some changes made since that time. The council did approve the rezoning in November of this year, so the applicant's back for building and site plan. I will add there will be one more approval that will be needed for a development agreement, which I'll kind of get into the details in a little bit. But first, in terms of the site plan, a couple of things have changed since our PC meeting. The access is kind of flipped, where there used to be a right in, right out off Port Washington Road and a full access at Highland. It's been flipped around. That's based on conversations with the county and what they would allow. And so now the site is showing a full access opening on Port Washington Road and a right in, right out on Highland Road. The applicant did add the berms and landscaping along the outer edge of the development to protect from future residential development to the west.
Jack, I think you've said that wrong. I think the in-out is off Highland and the right only is off Port.
No.
No, it was flipped. It's a right in, right out at Highland, and it's a full access at Port Washington.
Okay, excuse me.
That's okay. So the site has 131 parking stalls, which meets the code requirement for a medical office building. I have the list and the report of all the criteria of the NC district. The only one that there's an issue with right now is this dumpster enclosure that's shown right in this location. Since it is a structure, it does have to meet the 30-foot offset. So We'll work with the applicant on finding a new location for that dumpster, which complies with our setback requirement. As the original rezoning request showed, there is this outlot in front of the site. The city and the applicant are basically trying to partner up with what goes in that outlot. They did show the proposed path that runs from property line through the site all the way to property line, which was a condition of the PUD. There is some landscaping that's showed in the landscaping plan, and there's an alternative plan that the city would like to see, and that's one of the items that will be addressed through the development agreement. There's also an issue of light fixtures. The Eleo Creek neighborhood light fixture has not been selected yet. Once that gets selected, we'll work with the applicant to locate those in a fashion along alternating sides of this path. We're just not quite there yet. We wanted to keep this project moving along. So that'll also be addressed in the development agreement. I'll show you some renderings of the building. This is somewhat changed from the time they were in front of the council for a consultation. The council felt that the building should look a little bit more traditional and fit in with the residential look. So the applicant has made changes. There's some gable ends, there's brick, stone. It's a one-story structure. Just kind of run through some of the different renderings from the different locations. Staff has worked with the applicant over the last few months to tweak and refine it as much as possible. This was shown to the council. There was support for the design, and staff is supportive of the design as well at this point. In terms of landscaping, there's a few recommendations we're making. I'm going to go to landscaping plan. One of the things that I mentioned in the report from our landscape consultant was the lack of street trees along both Port and Highland. We'll address those issues through the development agreement with the path and the lighting. We're not looking for a traditional formal street tree layout along those two streets. We're looking for more of an alternating path or alternating scheme along the pathway with the lighting. So we'll work on that, and that'll come back with the development agreement. The other issue that we are asking to be addressed is we're looking to add a couple year-round plantings kind of in this area here where my mouse is. That's just to help defray any lighting that may come in for people exiting off Highland that would affect any of the neighbors across the street. The lighting plan shows 16-foot tall light fixtures and 42-inch bollards. Both comply with our code. They did not include any wall packs or other ground mounting lighting, so any of that will need to be approved by staff as a condition of approval. There's also and I think you received correspondence from former Mayor Abendroth about specimen trees. There are 2 specimen trees on site. I'll show you. They're located. One of them's a 14-inch sugar maple that was referenced by the mayor. That's located basically down in this area here. And then there's also a white pine that's located basically in this area. The city forester's recommendation is to remove them both. I know there was a concern about removing that sugar maple. In numerous conversations with him, he felt that because of the overhead power lines, it's been topped several times and it's lost its natural shape, and he felt it was worthy of being removed. So those are added in terms of the condition that they would have to comply with the replacement policy of the tree preservation manual. So with that, we do recommend approval according to the conditions in the report, and Kristen's here to answer any questions there may be about traffic or stormwater or drainage. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ford, is there anything you'd like to add to the presentation, or anybody else from your team?
Well, good evening, Mayor, and thank you. John Ford, representing Mequon Medical, the developer of the medical clinic. To be honest with you, Jack took a number of my points, so I don't have a lot to add this evening. Obviously, the design, some of you may recall, we originally proposed a much more commercial type design about a year ago, and obviously worked extensively with city staff and aldermen and so forth to modify, alter, and really redesign the architecture to more closely match the surrounding residential type architecture, including the hospital to the north in Newcastle and others. The current design in front of you really features a entirely all masonry including both brick and stone throughout. As Jack mentioned, we've incorporated roof gables strategically placed to really give it a much more residential feel. And also, I would suggest that this building is really a four-sided architecture overall. So no matter what angle or street one might be approaching or viewing the building from, really kind of a four-sided architecture. As Jack mentioned, with regards to the landscaping, back in July, you had asked for a landscaping buffer on both the north and west property lines. We've really tried to incorporate not only those two elevations, but also along Highland and Port Washington. The current design includes the addition of approximately 67 new trees and over 600 shrubs and perennials throughout the landscaping. The outlot that Jack mentioned as part of the design is roughly 0.4 acres out at the corner of Highland and Port Washington. That parcel would be donated as part of this. The outlot area itself, with the required 8-foot wide asphalt pathway, we would install as part of the development, along with the landscaping that Jack is showing there on the screen in front of us. Also, we have extended an offer, or the current landowner has extended an offer to the city, if the city so desires in the future at some point, if they wanted to install a more feature sign wall, that could be accommodated at the corner at the city's cost, given the future interchange at this location coming off of I-43. One other thing that was requested back in July at the Plan Commission meeting, there was a concern raised about the Highland driveway that being immediately across from the residential house that is west of the Highland house. We worked with city staff to address this, whereby the access drive, the right in, right out that you see there today, that is east of where it was previously located, so that the headlights would not be pointed directly at that residential house across the street. When we swapped out the traffic here with both Port Washington and Highland, we had Taddy do an updated traffic study. That updated traffic analysis study we submitted, that was completed last week, and we submitted to the city staff for their review. Outside of that, we do have all members of our design team, including architectural, civil, landscaping, and traffic on this call. If there's any specific questions, we're happy to dive into further. But we certainly appreciate the support of the project, and thank you for your time and kind of request approval this evening. And obviously, we'll continue to work with city staff on the conditions as outlined within their report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. It's a nice looking project.
Thank you.
Questions, comments of Mr. Stoker?
I've got several comments and a couple of questions. First of all, I really like the architecture. I think the building looks outstanding. Kudos to your design team. Couple of questions are, the path, and this may be a staff question or it may be for the applicant, the path, is that going to be a paved path or is it going to be stone, or what is the plan for the path?
It's shown as asphalt.
And this is more for the city. Is this kind of the plan that we've had conversation about the interconnectivity on this side of the road? Is the plan that this will continue through into the residential, if there would be residential near this, or I guess at this point it's going to terminate at nothing, but the intent, I'm guessing, is long-term connecting to something else?
Commissioner Stoker, commissioners, this is Kim Tollefson. That is correct. As part of our policy discussions for the Uleo Creek neighborhood, we've talked about the ability to have interconnectivity, but also a path at least on one side of the public roads, including Highland and Port Washington Road. In this case, we made sure we got the paths extended to each of the property lines, so that as we go forward with adjacent development proposals in the future, we'll be able to make that connection.
Thank you. My other question is with respect to the right in, right out only on Highland Road. I was aware that I thought that was going to be on Port Washington. I understand Port Washington Road's a county highway and they've made the change. Does it have to be a right in and right out only on Highland? Does anybody have, does the county have jurisdiction over that as well?
No, that was a decision. Basically, the county is kind of a similar requirement we do. Originally, we talked about only having one access point, and we wanted it on Port. And their requirement said if you're gonna have just one access point, it has to go on the less traveled road, which would have been Highland, which we didn't want. So we thought the best, closest next thing would be a full interchange at Port, and then just the right in, right out at Highland. There's nothing preventing a full or a full access point at Highland. I think Kristen could speak to what that would mean in terms of any changes, but I think that when that was evaluated, when it was flipped, there wasn't much that would have caused an issue with that situation.
Okay, my only thinking is trying to go north on Port Washington Road. It might actually be easier to come out on the Highland and make the left-hand turn to head north on Port Road during certain traffic times. But obviously, there's a traffic study that knows a lot more about it than I do.
Well, I think the intent to limit was to limit traffic on Highland for the residents of the area to have less people going in and out that way.
Okay, my final question is regarding item number 12 and staff's approval. Can someone refresh my memory about that pilot agreement? What is the pilot agreement? Or I'm embarrassed to ask, but I can't recall what
No,
that is.
that's okay. There was a condition added, I think it was actually Alderman Urban that added it at the council level, that said basically if this property ever became or requested tax exempt status, there would be a pilot agreement in place that we would collect our share of the tax revenue. So as part of the development agreement, we will incorporate this condition in there. We fully anticipate that it will be a taxable entity at this point, but just in case in the future that it's not, we'll have this agreement in place that we can trigger the pilot for our share of the taxes.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Choran.
I'm going to start with the site. I understand at the July meeting, we requested the berming on the north and the west. We have that correct, Jack?
I didn't hear the berming. Yes, the berming is there.
Okay. With regards to the sugar maple, I think it's being in the neighborhood and driving past it this last fall. That's one of the most beautiful trees, redeeming character of the site. I'd hate to have that tree come down. I mean, I understand what the forester is saying, but in my opinion, every effort should be made to keep that tree. I'm going to jump onto the building. Contrary to Commissioner Stoker's opinion, I am disappointed with the building. They've made an effort to make it look residential, but I've got a number of issues. The metal fascia that runs along the eaves and runs up the gables is just so heavy. It just, in my opinion, it looks a little strange. There doesn't seem to be any hierarchy with the buildings. You've got the entrances that are at a gable that's at the same height as the end pieces. In the north elevation, there's no rhyme or reason to the brick pattern. There's some brick pattern in a particular area and nowhere else in the building that I could see. The east gable, on the east, the gable on the roof of the small wing of the building, it looks like it's crushing the building underneath it, where all the glass is. You can see that there. I'm just disappointed. I think it needs a lot more work. Obviously, Commissioner Stoker doesn't agree with me, but I think they could have done better with all the activity and all the conversations that have been taken with regards to the zoning and allowing this building here. I think it could have been done better. Those are my comments.
Are those just comments or are you making a request of some sort?
Well, I would, my opinion, I would like other people's opinion, but I'd like to be able to have the opportunity to sit down and talk through some of my comments with staff and the architectural group. I mean, I've got a huge regard for Epstein. I had worked there at one time, and Catalyst is a great group, and Ascension, of course, is wonderful. But I think some tweaking needs to be done. I would suggest that it gets tabled and work. Perhaps, well, certainly myself and perhaps Mr. Schaefer to tweak a couple things. I'd be curious to hear what his opinion is and other people.
Commissioner Schaefer, was that your hand?
I concur with Commissioner Shoren. I did have a couple questions.
Can't hear you.
This exterior stone, this cast stone.
Jim,
Yes,
I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you.
my mic is on.
Can barely hear you.
To your
Can you hear
mic,
me
very
now?
soft. That's better.
In general, I agree with Commissioner Chorin regarding the architecture. I do have one question. That cast stone, is that set in a mortar bed or is that adhered to the wall?
I don't know if Mr. Ford or his colleague could hear the question. His question is the cast stone adhering to the mortar bed or is it in the wall?
Glued, basically glued to the wall.
Or is it glued to the wall?
David or Melissa from Epstein, do you want to answer that?
Sure, this is David Gross with Epstein Ewan. The masonry is all full bed masonry, 4-inch deep, laid up brick or stone. So there's no sticky bricks or fake things. It's all natural, high quality materials. So
I'm pleased to hear that. But I would concur with Commissioner Chorin. Perhaps it's the perspective, but the rakes and the cornices look very heavy compared to the architecture of the rest of the building.
Really can't hear you, Jim. I don't know if others can. I
said
can't.
that the cornice and the gable ends look very heavy compared to the architecture of the rest of the building. And they seem to dominate it. Now, maybe that's just the perspective, but that's my feeling. Other than that, I agree with the other commissioners.
Thank you. Alderman Nurbin?
Yeah, I fielded a phone call from Strelchek today. We talked at great length about the situation with the specimen trees. I agree that the pine is in poor shape. I went out and looked at the site today, and the pine definitely needs to go. But the sugar maple, to Commissioner Chorin's point, is a gorgeous, gorgeous tree. I drove past it a few times this fall. It absolutely just lights up the site. I just agree with the forester's report that eventually that canopy is going to grow into the utilities that are overhead. After looking at that, I think there's an opportunity to get a tree spade out there and pull that tree up and move it back to the north and west behind that planted bed corner that's going to be, that could be a city entranceway, and that would make a lovely bed for that entire planting. So I'll make an amendment.
No, we don't have a motion on the table yet.
Okay, well, when the time is right,
Right.
I will make one to attempt to move that tree because I think it's eligible. It's of a size you can get a tree spade in and move it, and I think it'd be horrible to lose it. And if I'd be willing to trade. I don't know if it's paying the $2,200 to the tree fund or the planting. I would be willing to offset some of that to save that tree because I think it'll make the whole site once it's put in.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Is there a motion of some sort here?
You're looking for a motion. I motion that we table it, give the architects on the plan commission an opportunity to spend some time with the developer and the architect to refine and address some of the concerns.
Let me ask, is there a second to that? And then I have a question for staff about the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there a way we can do this that doesn't lose a whole month?
Well, I was gonna suggest maybe splitting a motion and we could approve. I mean, unless there's a concern about modifying the footprint of the building, we could approve the site landscaping, lighting, and whatever we want to do with the tree, and then we could just table the architecture and bring that back separate.
I would I would support that.
Mr. Schaefer?
I'll support it.
Okay, so that's the motion, so that the developer doesn't lose a month, which at this point
I
might not be
understand.
necessarily reasonable.
This is Blake Estes. Thank you, Mayor, for and staff. Thank you.
Alderman Urban, did you? Oh, Alderman Commissioner Schaefer.
I was going to make the friendly amendment. I was going to speak. I'm glad that Commissioner Chorin and Alderman Nervin spoke about the tree because I was going to say the same. So I guess I would ask for a friendly amendment that included in what we approved tonight is the preservation of the sugar maple.
Is that a friendly amendment, Mr. Schaefer and Mr. Chorin?
I accept.
Okay, so we don't really need a second on that since they're making it part of their motion. Any other discussions regarding the motion? So the motion is that there would be an attempt to, that we would approve everything except for the architecture tonight, that there'd be an attempt to relocate the sugar maple or otherwise preserve it, and otherwise that would be subject to the recommendations of staff in the report. Is that an accurate summation of the motion and the second, Commissioner Chorin?
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Anybody else have any further comments?
I just have
Mr. Zane?
I just have a question for clarification. So is the choice for the tree to keep it where it is or try to relocate it, or is it just to relocate it? Because I just want to confer with the city forester, if he feels that it won't survive a relocation, would you prefer then it to remain where it is, or risk trying to relocate it regardless of his input in terms of its survivability?
I see Alderman Nervin's raising his hand. If you want to go, I have a thought on that, but please go.
Alderman Nervin?
Yeah, thank you. I'd attempt to move the tree if we could, but I tried calling the city forester today and couldn't get through to him. That very question. He does bring up a good point. In its current location, continues to grow, and it's only about half to maybe a third of its full full grow out on that tree. As it continues, it's going to grow right up into the utilities. It's already getting into the phone and cable at the bottom, which is pretty benign. Once it grows higher, it's going to be into and there'll be an Ashland truck out there hacking away at it, like are subject to in Mequon along the side of the road next to the utility. So I'd lean towards relocation if we can, but I just don't know the feasibility of the survival rate for the tree. I know you have to water them quite heavily the first 2 or 3 years. It does take some effort, but I think it'd be worth it in this case.
So if I understand correctly, it's the motion, and obviously the movement and the second have to confirm this, that the request would be to attempt to move the tree to a better unobstructed location. If that can't occur, would the request, would then the applicant have the authority to cut down the tree? I'm trying to understand the motion.
I don't know who answers that. I think preserve it regardless is what I was speaking. That was what my
Even if it's
amendment
gonna end up
was.
getting all hacked up because a maple tree can be 60 feet high.
Well,
so
but a maple tree also doesn't grow. It doesn't grow at an exponential rate, and potentially, what about the lines potentially being buried on that corner? If it was at some point to become an entry or a sort of showcase intersection for the city, I don't know that we necessarily would want power lines there anyway. So I don't want to plan for it to run into the power lines when it's not a insurmountable thing, right?
Sugar maple grows about 1 to 2 feet a year. I looked that up today. Alderman Nervin, Commissioner Chorin, Commissioner Schaefer, somebody.
Well, you may cite Alderman Nervin Alderman Strelchuk and I talked about burying electrical, but the reality is that is hundreds of thousands of dollars, perhaps millions, depending on how with it. It's quite expensive to bury electrical. I doubt that we're going to happen, even if that's a gateway. It's really quite expensive. It's extraordinarily expensive. I wouldn't lobby that onto this development. It's too much money.
So what's the motion?
Well, the motion is, well, you're the movement. So unless we
Well,
want to have
okay.
an amendment to the motion, somebody can offer an amendment, but it's your motion.
Right. The motion is to approve the site plan, separate the architecture for review. And my understanding of the whole discussion with regarding the maple tree, now that I've heard other sides, is to keep it where it is in the hopes that it survives. And if it reaches a point that it doesn't, then it will be removed like it's being planned to be removed now.
Okay, that's the motion. Commissioner Schaefer, is that what you're,
Yes, I'll second that.
okay, so that's the motion. Any other amendments? I think in the long run, what we did is shift the cost of removing this maple from the developer to the city, but
Yeah.
unless it can be moved. Alderman Nervin.
I'll make an amendment to that motion to hate the tree, as I originally tried to suggest. It's destined apart in its current location. I think it's not a guarantee you'll be able to save it, but it's not so big you can't. I've seen larger trees moved. I would make an amendment to move the tree to the north and west. That little wedge of a parcel that's at the corner that could be an entranceway for the city. If it's just moved 34 and it survives, that tree will last a long, long time and not need to have its canopy cut off because of interference with the utility. And it's gorgeous.
So we have a proposed amendment to move the tree north and west in a location to be ultimately approved by staff. I'm filling in the details, to pinpoint it. Is there a second to that motion?
Can I
I'll
second that?
it. Okay. What's that? Was there a second?
I don't know if as the maker of the motion can
You can move.
second it.
You can second the amendment. There's a motion and a second. Discussion purely on the amendment. Please call the roll on the amendment.
Okay. Commissioner Gentes,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Lemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Stoker,
Aye.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Nervin,
Aye.
Mayor Worth.
Aye. So that amends the motion. You haven't answered with that amendment is what happens if, well, I mean, I'm assuming they need to move it. If it dies, it dies.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, sorry. I mean, I think doesn't there have to be a certain level of due diligence and care to try to preserve it and not just move it and ignore it?
Well, I think
I mean, I don't know how to monitor that, but that's what we're saying. We're not saying move it and then, I don't know. I just feel a little
I just meant
uncomfortable
if it in the process of moving, The moving kills it, just like any of the other landscaping, they have to maintain it for 3 years. I think
Yeah.
that's the length, isn't it, Director Tellefson? Or is it 2 years?
3.
3. So we have a motion and a second to, we don't need to repeat it. We've said it too many times. Any other comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
This is on the original motion.
Correct. So it's to approve except for the architecture, subject to all of staff's comments and recommendations that were previously outlined. But the tree gets moved.
Okay. Commissioner Gentes,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Lemke,
Aye.
Commissioner John Stoker,
Aye.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Nervin,
Aye.
Mayor Worth.
Aye. I think it's good you guys can get going. We'll look for some revised or maybe revised plans next month or whenever we next can hear from you. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, December 14th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Have a good evening. Thank you, everyone.